Going to do a quick ditty here. Uh, since I like to talk about inflation so much, and I'm going to put out another call, another prediction for posterity here. Um, Inflation this month, year over year, the inflation was 8.5% year over year. Now, I'm more concerned with the month over month number, which we'll see in a minute. But before we even continue, let's look at one of the inputs here for CPI. One of the inputs is shelter, housing, rent, mortgage, etc. And the government says that rent has only gone up 5% year over year. So rent's only gone up 5% in the last year, according to them. That's one third of the calculation. So that whatever that number is has a drastic impact on the overall CPI number that pops out. Well, the average person can tell you that rent or mortgage or whatever the case may be. I mean, sure, if you bought a house, the mortgage is going to be locked in. If you bought a house prior to, several years ago, but if you buy, I mean, the average person who has bought a house or is renting right now can tell you that housing has gone up a lot more than 5% year over year. That would mean that if you paid $1,000 in last year, then your rent's only gone up to $1,050 or $50. Yeah, one. So it only gone up $50 in 1 year. That is completely divorced from reality, and everyone knows it. But a lot of normies, they don't understand these things. They don't understand that the Fed and the Federal Reserve and the Bureau of Labor Statistics makes this. They outright lie about some of these inputs. They're lying about the average cost of housing. And if that number was, let's say, what rent.com puts the number at 24% year over year, this report came out March 15th, 2022. And as of then, they were saying that rent had gone up 24% year over year. That is year over year. So imagine if you take, let's say, because this is just rent.com, so it's just one source. So imagine if we aggregated all the sources for rent year over year and mortgage together, then I would say the average mortgage slash rent has gone up probably 15 to 20% year over year. Now, if we took that 15 or 20% and we put it in this number being one third of the entire calculation, then your year over year number would be much higher. It would be definitely over 10%. I can't do it off the top of my head, but it would be something like probably 12, 13%. So what they do is they use alternate or alternative accounting methods. The Fed literally makes up their own accounting rules, or the one of these, either the Bureau of Labor, the BLS, or the Fed. I don't know exactly who puts this together. I think it's BLS. So they make up their own accounting rules to accommodate the government, because they know that inflation pisses people off. So what they're going to do, if they can get away with it, is lie. And they will continue to lie as long as they can, because the only consequence for there's not lying at this point has no benefit to them. But lying can possibly keep some of the population off their back. What is their what is the consequence to them lying right now? Is anybody going to slap them on the wrist or wag their finger at them, or maybe fire people for doing this? Is the electorate going to fire politicians for allowing this to happen? They don't care. So it's going to continue to happen. See, the The government lies because the electorate lets them lie, which is what I really wanted to, the point I really wanted to, goes along with the point I really wanted to make in this video. I'm going to try and keep it short, so let's move on. So month over month, which is what I'm more concerned with, was 1.2%, which is actually really high. I thought it would be, I was thinking maybe about 1%, but I'm really surprised it went up to 1.2%. So that's telling you how much prices have increased in the last month. And to me, that's a much more, that number tells me a lot more about what's going on in the markets and in the money supply and with the supply chain and all that. And it also gives me a better idea of the rate of change of inflation. How fast is inflation accelerating? Okay, is it accelerating, and how fast, or is it decreasing, and how fast is it decreasing? So that is a much more important number to me. So, my call is, of course, there was the media, the scam artist, financial media types, the Bloombergs, and all these people saying that this may be the peak of inflation. They've said that many times over the past couple years, and they're going to keep saying it because their job is to help manufacture consent for not only the government, but for the financial institutions that sponsor them. Because if anybody has made off like a bandit through all of this monetary stimulus from the Fed, it's been the big investment banks. So, they want to kind of keep the inflation under wraps for as long as possible because they're making off like bandits. So, what was the one thing I wanted to... So you're seeing this a lot. I don't know what that is. What is going on here? So you see this a lot. So she's making a good point and a bad point here. Carla Sands, who knows, some conservative lady, some Republican. And so she's saying it's not Vladimir Putin's fault that inflation is its highest rate in 40 years. It's Joe Biden's fault. It's Joe Biden's. First of all, Vladimir Putin approves of that message. So this is the problem with this situation is inflation. Sure, it is partly Joe Biden's fault, and it's also partly Donald Trump's fault, and it's also partly Obama's fault. I mean, if we look at spending really picked up. I mean, Bush Jr. spent a lot of money, deficit spent a lot too, but it was Obama that really got the money printers going more than any other president in history, and Trump continued that policy and actually added to it quite a bit. We had the highest deficit in history I believe, at least in recent memory, in 2020. Two of the stimulus checks were Donald Trump's stimulus checks. And of course, I was screaming from the rooftops to everybody I knew. I said, these stimulus checks are going to cause inflation because we are printing money, okay, and putting it directly into the consumer's hands. And the consumer will spend that money on an ever-dwindling supply of goods and services. Of course, you would have gotten nothing but blank stares if you said that in 2020 when they were handing out the stimulus checks. And it wasn't just the stimulus checks. It was the rent moratorium, which added to disposable income. It was the extended unemployment benefits. It was the PPP loans. That put a lot of money. A lot of people made off pretty well with those PPP loans. So... and Obama did the same thing, and Bush as well. Bush spent a lot of money as well. At the time, people said he was a big spender at the time. Okay. So it's not just Biden's fault. Now, has been completely MIA. They spent the first all of last year denying that it was happening, and then this year acknowledging it was happening, but doing nothing to stop it and doing nothing to fix it other than tell the Fed to raise interest rates. I don't. Well, I'm sure that the White House has put pressure on the Fed to do something about the inflation. However, raising interest rates 50 basis points per month is not going to fix the inflation problem. And on top of that, they started too late because they were too busy denying that it was happening for almost a year. So really right now they have to do a Paul Volcker and they have to put interest rates at 15 to 20%, but they can't do that, as we all know, because there's too much debt in the system, because our economy has become a debt-based consumerist economy. Without the debt, without the ability to take debt, to borrow money, and I'm not talking about the government, I'm talking about the entire economy is reliant on debt. Things would grind to a screeching halt. If you raise the interest rates, the Fed funds rate, okay, will trickle down to the rest of the system, and it would make it impossible for many businesses to continue borrowing money, especially since they already have so much debt on their balance sheet. But whose fault is it? That's the question. Whose fault is it? We want someone to blame. It's the American voters' fault. It is the electorate's fault. First and foremost. You know, I heard someone say the problem with democracies is that the electorate always ends up voting for its own largesse, which is true. And we've been voting for our own largesse for decades now. It doesn't help that our education system is designed to keep people dumb, I guess, because the average person is completely clueless when it comes to economics. And I'm an economics nerd, so that bothers me. That really just irritates me. But yeah, so if we sit here and we just blame Joe Biden, then what's going to happen? They're going to vote Republican in November, and everybody's going to think that's going to take care of not only the inflation problem but a lot of other problems. And I don't see what the Republicans can do that's really going to tackle this, because like I said, we have a systemic issue here. Our system relies on debt. Raising interest rates would destroy the economy. And no politician is going to do anything that's going to get him fired. So it's kind of like the whole system is stuck between a rock and a hard place. But the person to blame, the people to blame, is the American voter, because the American voter has elected time and time again over the past few decades. Time and time again voted for reckless spenders, from Bush to Obama to Trump and now Biden. Okay, so it is the American voter, first and foremost, that is to blame. And until the American voter takes ownership, the average person takes ownership and says, wait, maybe I shouldn't vote for that guy who promises me free shit. Or maybe I shouldn't vote for that Republican who says he's going to be fiscally conservative, but we all know he won't be. He's going to go spend a ton of money, not only on defense, but a lot of other shit. I mean, they're complete grifters at this point. So until the average American sits there, self-reflects a little bit and says, well, maybe I should really think about, how my country is run more, and actually take the act of voting seriously. If I can do that, then maybe we can fix this problem. Until then, it's just going to be the blame game. Okay, and the Republicans are going to come in, and I don't think they'll be able to take it to be able to do much because the remedies. I think it's pretty much too late at this point. First of all, we just have too much debt, and inflation is already too high. I think this can only go towards a currency crash and nothing else, and a complete reorientation of the system, and hopefully decentralization. But I don't see what the Republicans can do if they do get in power, especially just being Congress as running Congress. Then the president's going to veto anything they try to do. Okay, it's going to get worse and worse. I mean, really, you have to cut government spending, cut the and that's another problem. The bureaucracy, cut the bureaucracy. Well, we all see what happened to Trump when he talked about he campaigned on draining the swamp. The swamp investigated him, harassed him, made up conspiracies like RussiaGate. So the swamp is out of control. You're not going to tame that swamp. The swamp has to die on its own, and it will. But I don't see who can fix this. So, and I don't see how just blaming Biden. Yeah, I mean it's good to look. I can't stand Biden. I can't stand him. I couldn't stand Trump. All of these politicians are worthless. I hate them all. But I don't see how it's constructive to just say, well, this is all Biden's fault, because it's not. We have to look at the monetary policy that's been in place for decades with Alan Greenspan, all the way back to Alan Greenspan. This starts. Okay, so that's my spiel. I just want to encourage people to just really think about what's going on, and don't jump on this bandwagon so readily. We need to do some. We're going to have to make drastic changes here in order to fix this problem, because it's become a big problem, because the American voter has done nothing but ignored it for the past couple decades, and the future generations and even current generations are going to really suffer because of these bad choices that previous generations have made. So not necessarily just Biden's fault. Now, Biden hasn't, like I said, he's spent the first year just denying it. Second, now he's just playing the blame game. He doesn't seem to be serious about doing it. He's completely worthless. He's completely impotent. He's, definitely one of the worst presidents we've ever had. He has to be. I mean, the diplomatic situation is falling apart. The economy is falling apart. It's just a shit show. But so that's it. I'm going to leave it at that.